What if I told you that these 5 credit cards alone literally just got me a 1 week's long vacation to Greece? So today in this video, I'm going to show you one by one each one of these credit cards and how it allowed me to go to Greece, see some of the nicest places, stay in some of the nicest hotels, meeting some of the nicest people, eating some of the best food I could have ever asked for an absolutely an amazing trip, and literally actually the best trip that my wife and I have ever been on. So we're going to do it all faster than you could say Mamma Mia. Because that's exactly where our story starts today. Because just about a month ago, we realized that my wife's birthday was coming up and we didn't actually have anything planned. But we realized that we did just get our passports recently, and I thought in my mind, wait a second, Mamma Mia is my wife's favorite movie of all time. It just so happens to be set in Greece. And yes, these blue domes and these types of buildings that you see, we actually did end up getting to see. And that's why I'm calling this entire trip my wife's Mamma Mia birthday, because it's our favorite movie and she's always wanted to go to Greece. And it's her birthday, why not? So as soon as we had that idea, now we had to put the plan into motion. So no later than literally just about a month ago, I started planning on the best route, the best points and miles to actually get me there, until I realized, well, I've kind of been bankrupted on a lot of different points and miles currencies because I've been booking out so many other trips in the future. I mean, I have Japan starting to get booked, Italy is completely fully booked, I have Puerto Rico almost fully booked, many different trips in the pipeline over the next 12 months. Greece kind of came out of nowhere, so I kind of had to use some of the credits, points and miles and benefits that I wouldn't normally use, or ones that were kind of throwaways in the first place. Now, the first one isn't necessarily a throwaway. I would definitely say this is a valuable currency, and it all came from my Hawaiian Airlines credit card. What am I talking about? Well, we had to book the flight to get to Athens in the first place, Athens, Greece. But there were no direct flights that I could find, at least with the currencies that I had, or at least the airports that I wanted to fly out of. And I didn't really want to do any positioning flights for this trip, just to make it as least stressful as possible. But one thing I did find is that we could have killed two birds with one stone during this, that being this flight right here with Alaska, where we go from Charlotte to London Heathrow on a one-way flight that's about a little bit less than 8 hours for only 27,500 points per ticket one way. So about 55,000 points total for a one-way flight all the way to London. To which you might be wondering, like, wait a second, you just mentioned Hawaiian credit card. Why are you talking about Alaska? Well, if you're unfamiliar, Alaskan Airlines and Hawaiian Airlines merged, which actually allowed this little trick that allows you to effectively convert your Hawaiian Airlines miles to Alaskan miles, to which a lot of people in the community know that Alaska miles are an extremely powerful currency. So what did I do not that long ago? Well, I applied for the Hawaiian Airlines credit card because, well, and to save you a little bit of money, just know that the public offer is 2,000 spend in the first 90 days for 60,000 bonus miles. But if you type in getmyhawaiiancard.com, you actually get this deal where it's $1,000. So save yourself 1,000 in the first 90 days, and you'll get 60,000 bonus miles. All you have to do is go to this promo code up above, type in 000150, and wham bam, you'll have access to be able to apply for this specific credit card and the specific offer. To which, when I applied for this card, maybe about 9 months ago, it actually had just a one purchase. So you could just like spend a penny and I'll get 70,000 miles. So I had 70,000 Hawaiian miles, transfer them all to my Alaska mileage program, and use that to foot the bill for the 55,000 points needed to book the one way to London. Now, you might be wondering, why did I do a one way to London? Why didn't I try to do anything else to go straight to Athens? Because there are some flights that are direct to Athens, but they weren't available on the dates that we needed during her birthday, which was literally just last week. So what I ended up thinking in my mind, which was, both me and my wife had a soft spot for London over the course of our years, and we've always wanted to go there. So I figured, let's just do a really long layover in London, which ended up being a mistake, but a really long layover in London, which ended up being about 14 hours, and we could see all the different sites. So I booked a tour that actually showed us Big Ben, Westminster Abbey, Buckingham Palace, a huge walking tour. Why did I say it was a bit of a mistake? Well, let's just say that we did not sleep on the plane, and it was an overnight flight. We got to London about 7 a.m. We didn't realize that when you go to London around 7 a.m. and you try to take an Uber to Westminster near Big Ben, that there's about an hour and a half worth of traffic. So we took about 3 hours worth of Ubers during that entire commute. Seeing the sights in London was cool. I'm glad we actually ended up doing it, but I will say, one learning experience throughout this whole thing, and it was very nice to see Big Ben and Buckingham Palace and go through all of that. that was very nice and a bucket list item to kind of scratch off. Would I go there again in the near future? Probably not, if not just for a layover. However, one interesting thing that I learned, that there's a little tip in this story before we move on to all of Greece, is that you actually can do what's considered like a business stay in a hotel. Now, like I said, we were extremely tired and we had not showered and we had not eaten. So we wanted to just find a place that could just we can call home for at least a couple of hours. So we ended up finding this hotel, which is the Hilton Westminster. It's a curio collection, very close to where the tour would start. Since the tour started at 1 and we got to downtown around 10:30. So we had a few hours to kill. So instead of paying the full price of around $300 plus every single night for this, I went up to the front desk and I said, "We only need this for a few hours for our tour and stuff like that. We're leaving to go to Greece very soon. Is there any way I can pay like a discounted rate for just a few hours?" And she said, "Yes. Actually, there's for business travelers, they have something called like I don't know, a business stay. And it's essentially you can book it from 9 to 5, so like an 8-hour stay." Spoiler though, if you just ask for late checkout in your gold status, they actually can push you to later. And we actually got 7 p.m. late checkout. So we got about 9 hours in that entire hotel, and they charge you one third of the price. We only ended up spending about $120, whereas a full night would have been like $330, something like that. So, like one third of the price. And we got everything that we needed done, a shower. We got to sleep for 20 minutes. We went on our way to the tour, and we even got some food at the on-site place. So I just thought, if you have a really long layover, it might make sense, instead of staying in the airport, go find a hotel that'll allow for like an 8-hour stay. Call up first, go there, and then book it, because it actually was well worth it. And that hotel was very, very nice. I like that hotel actually a lot. And I did pay cash for that, unfortunately. So about 120, $150, something like that. So that's how I got there. We got to London, we got to see the sights, and I was able to do it with my Alaskan Miles via my Hawaiian Airlines credit card. Bam. That's one card down. Next, it's not a particular card, but it's an ecosystem. So I had transferred about 175,000 Chase points over to Aeroplan, Air Canada, because I knew that I was able to book some good flights via ANA for Japan, which I did. And I ended up getting 2 business class flights to Japan. However, I had left over about 25,000 Air Canada miles. And I said, okay, instead of completely bankrupting myself on Alaska, because I know those miles can go much further, I'm going to just use the last of my Air Canada miles. And I found this because we still had to get from London to Athens. And so I found a flight much like this one right here, where from London Heathrow to Athens on Aegean Air. That's that symbol right there, Aegean Air, which is actually a Greek airline, which is very nice. I'll show you some videos in a second. And you could book it with Air Canada for just 12,500 points per. And like I said, I had 25,000 left over, which means me and my wife were able to book this completely with the 25,000 miles I had left over. Wham bam, now I got my flight over to Athens. And you can see the arrival time is 3:50 a.m. And that's actually when we arrived in Athens. We were extremely tired. It was like 18 hours of no sleep, something like that. It was terrible. We ended up paying the taxes and fees of like 200 Canadian, which is about 150 US. So bam, got to pay those taxes and fees right there. So far on our trip, we're probably upwards to like $300 in cash just from the taxes and fees and all the flights and that hotel stay in London. And let me tell you, Agent Air, I asked my friend Konstantinos, who's from Greece, what does he think about Agent Air? And he said it's pretty much between Delta and United. And he wasn't wrong. I mean, look how nice everything looks. I mean, the colors, it's very vibrant. It was actually a fun time. My wife actually recounted that she fell asleep a little bit on the flight, and she woke up and she noticed everyone was like chatting and having fun and talking. Everybody's speaking Greek. In fact, nobody spoke English to us this entire flight. They literally got us on board, hello and all these different things, telling us things all in Greek. There was no, I think we were the only Americans on the flight because everybody was speaking Greek to one another. So it was very funny, but it was kind of like a party at 10 p.m. all the way to like 3 a.m. Athens time on this flight with all these Greeks. So that was actually an amazing airline, and I can't actually recommend Asian Airlines enough. That was a good time. So bam, we landed in Athens. It's now 4 a.m. And by the time we, make our way through the airport, and now we're sitting in the arrival hall, I was now awaiting my Viator private transfer, where you could actually book someone to come, hold a sign up, and drive you in a private car all the way to your first hotel, which is a Hilton, and we'll get to it. However, the best thing in the world happened at this time, and the guy never showed up. I had him set to pick us up at 5 a.m. Nobody ever actually showed up for that. And I ended up getting a refund for that, but it was actually a blessing in disguise because we actually met somebody that was going to be our mentor for this entire trip. Because just a half hour later, we ended up calling an Uber, to which this guy arrived. His name is Nippon, and he was absolutely amazing. He's actually from India, but moved to Greece when he was 9, and he gave us the greatest entrance to a country that you can ever possibly imagine. Immediately greeted us when we were just getting spoken to in Greek for a few hours, to completely perfect English, as good as mine, well, as good as mine could be. And he said, "How's it going? Welcome to Greece." All these different things. Took our bags, put it in the taxi, and we started heading off to our first hotel. And with him, we had an amazing conversation. We were overlooking the mountains of Athens, driving to downtown where we see this. We're watching the sun rise over the mountains. It was an amazing time. He was speaking to us about the areas and where is safe.
Make sure you try McDonald's.
Yeah, here?
Which you will try, I'm sure.
And what's good. Some Greek words like yasis, which is hello or goodbye, or kalimera, which is like good morning. And the most amazing thing happened during this time. And that was that my wife mentioned that where we're from in Staten Island, New York, there was a lot of Greeks and they have a lot of Greek food. One of her favorite foods is spinach pie. And immediately as she said spinach pie, he looked up at the visor and he says, "Spanakopita." We were like, "What's that?" He's like, "That's spinach pie in Greece. It's spanakopita. That's what we call it." And he said, "That's my favorite food too. Do you guys have a moment? Do you have like a second before you go to the hotel?" He said, "My treat, I will take you to my favorite spanakopita shop." So literally, and yeah, we're pretty trusting. Literally, just a few minutes after that, we pull into this place called the Bread Factory, which is kind of funny of a name. He asks for some spanakopita, spinach pie. He actually gets one for himself and one completely for free. He paid for us to have spanakopita to greet us for our first time in Greece. Like, you couldn't have written a better story of an entrance to this. We were so like, we were like, how could we repay? Like, that's too much. You do not have to do that. But he really insisted and he made sure that we got our spinach pie and that we had the best welcome possible. Drove us to our first hotel, which is now the next credit card in question. You guys may be wondering, my Delta SkyMiles credit card, how does that relate to hotels? Well, if you're unfamiliar, this is a card that I actually canceled recently, but just before I canceled it, I didn't tell really anybody about this. But this credit card right here has a special credit on it, one that most people consider a throwaway. But I used it to book one night in this particular hotel, that being the $150 Delta Stays credit. It's Delta Stays, it technically uses Expedia and allows you to book hotels, pay with your card, and you get a statement credit back of $150 just a couple days after. So what did I do? I ended up booking this hotel right here, the Adia Aluma in Athens. It's a curio collection by Hilton. And honestly, it was one of the best hotels of this entire stay. So it was just a little bit over $200 per night. So I ended up paying about $50 out of pocket after getting my credit back, but it was absolutely well worth it because I was going to cancel that card anyway, and I wanted to use that credit before it went away into the ether. So that was how I booked my first night in Athens. And let me tell you, this hotel, okay, remember the timeline here. We got to this hotel around 7 a.m., 6 a.m., something like that. And just in a few hours, around 2 p.m., we had a food tour booked because I figured a food tour would be the best way to learn the lay of the land, and actually talk to some locals and get some local food in. Best idea of my life. But at this time, we just had gotten to the hotel and we had just a few hours to kill. Luckily, as soon as we checked in, they greeted us. They said, "Welcome. Thank you so much for choosing our hotel." And what you guys may not know is this hotel is very recently new. It's only opened maybe about a month ago. I think like mid-May it's open. So it's a completely new hotel, and I knew that they wanted to make the best impression. So part of my mission on this was like, okay, I really need them to let us check in at like 7 a.m. so we can get like 5 hours of sleep finally after like 18 hours of no sleep, and we can get on our merry way with the tour. Sure enough, I was greeted with the most warm welcome you could possibly think of. And what they say is true. Gold status in general is really worth its weight in gold when you're abroad. You're kind of treated like a king. They mentioned, "Oh, thank you so much for being gold status. Just for that, we're actually going to be upgrading your room. And yes, we're going to be able to honor it and check you in at 7 a.m." So, like 8 hours before when you're supposed to normally check in, we were able to check in to a perfectly clean room that you can see right here. Mirrored every very interesting room. Never been in a room like this, but everything was mirrors, giant pillows, very, very nice bathroom, expansive room. They always have water in the rooms as well, which most hotels in the US don't really do that as much. in Greece, all the hotel rooms are stacked with water, absolutely stacked, complimentary. And so we hung out there and we slept for, like I said, a good 5 hours. Good 5 hours, which is all we needed to be on our way to our food tour. And I really accidentally planned this perfectly because this hotel happened to only just be about a 10-minute walk from Monastriaki Square, which happened to be exactly where the food tour started. So our first day in a new country, we've never done this before. We start and we head out into the open road. And now we're in a city that we've never been in a country we've never been in, with people we've never met, with a language we don't speak. So safe to say we're a little bit nerve-wracking at first because we don't know what to expect. We've never done this before. We didn't really know what to think at first, but little did we know that we would be walking on this strip over and over and over throughout our entire week-long stay that we were there. And oh man, I could have never asked for a better food tour. I mean, Nicoletti, I believe her name was. We never actually got her name, but I think it was Nicoletti. She knew the lay of the land. She was from Greece. She is loud, she is aggressive, and she's very fun in the best way possible. Highly recommend doing this tour because we got to not only for $70 per person, so about $140 for my wife and I to do this tour, ended up getting like 7 courses, like easily $50 worth of food, and we got a tour and some history and lay of the land and the culture. Like there is no like it was amazing. Look at this. First thing that we get on our journey, spinach pie. Trying out some spinach pie. Amazing, absolutely amazing. Then we go to this coffee shop called Mocha, and we have some of the best coffee where they put it in sand, and it's a special maneuver. And my wife said it's the best coffee she's ever had in her life. Greek yogurt, which is like amazing. We ended up getting that a couple of times during our stay. You know, actual authentic Greek yogurt. We ended up going to a honey shop and trying out some different types of honeys, some gyros, not gyros, it's gyros. Then some dessert and like a million different things I'm not even remembering. A whole dinner, actually, yeah, a whole dinner we had as well, where we were passing around. And we met some people there from France and from America. It was absolutely amazing. It's the best tour ever. And as just a side note, if you want like all the details on like the places we went and the tours that we took, I'm actually going to put them in my newsletter. So if you want to sign up for that, it's down in the pinned comment below. I'm going to be putting in all the details and addresses, things that I can't fully cover in this video. So sign up for that if you want to get all the details of this entire trip. It's going to come out in the next couple of weeks, something like that. So that was absolutely amazing. And before the night was over, because we did have to get on a boat the following morning at 7 a.m., we ended up going back to our hotel, the Adia Aluma, the one I booked with my Delta card. And we ended up going to the rooftop where we have a nice, awesome view of all of Athens. And we just had some normal Greek handmade bread. Again, it was like, oh, the food just hits you. In Greece, it just hits you. My wife and I said that. Like, we were just trying some things, and then bam, it's just like, it's nothing like we have in America. It's like everybody said that it's a cliche. It is so true. It is absolutely so true. The kick that you get, it's, yeah, we want it. We want it. I want it right now, actually, if I can. And that ended that first night in that awesome hotel. Bam. The next day, we got to wake up. I called Nippon, remember, the Uber driver. Called him up, said, you mind driving us to the port? We drove all the way to the port called Paros. That's where we're going to be taking some boats for those of you who are going to go to Mykonos, Santorini, all the different islands. We ended up taking the Blue Star ferry all the way to Paros, which my friend Konstantinos mentioned that is kind of the island where native Greeks will go to vacation, because the boat's kind of expensive. You know, it's like a few $100s to get there and back. So most Greeks who live there will take some of their excess money and they'll travel to Paros to enjoy their time. A little bit less touristy, but still fairly touristy as well. It's a big island. But just so you know, that's the port that you go to get to all those different islands. And I'm going to do a whole separate video on the ships themselves because it was chaotic. It was insane. So be on the lookout for that because you need to know there's crazy things that happened during that ship. I'll just tell you one story during this ship. So on our way to Paros, it's a 4-hour boat ride. So you take 4 hours and you eventually get there. Now, the ride is nice. It's very smooth. If you're seasick, Blue Star is the way to go. It's a big ship. There's like 1,100 people. We get to Paros, and we realized that nobody was getting up. We were like, everyone's just sitting. So we assumed that these people know what they're doing. They've been here before. They're probably waiting for like the 1,100 people to clear out of the ship, right? They're just waiting. Like, why get on the line now? Just wait a few minutes, then go down. So then we went to the front of the ship and we ended up just, looking around. We were trying to see, all right, what's the port look like? All right, let's see these islands. And yes, you can see some of the blue domes, Mamma Mia vacation that this is supposed to be, right? You can see the blue domes, you can see the white buildings. Very, very cool. And all the people disembarking the ship. Well, 20 minutes go by and still some people are not getting up, and we start getting suspicious. We're like, what's going on? My wife gets an inkling and she says, all right, let's start heading down. What happens when we start moving down? Well, we go down a couple floors. All of a sudden, there's nobody here. There's absolutely nobody. The people are still upstairs, but there's nobody downstairs. And we see a worker, and the worker looks at us. And he's like, and he sees our luggage. And he's like, Paros? And we were like, yeah. He was like, there's no time. You need to go. You need to go. And we were like, what the hell's going on? Is this ship about to leave? We go down another flight of steps, and there's another worker who says, Paros, yes. He's like, go left, go left, go left. And we start sprinting down, and you see the gates starting to lower, and then we eventually get through, and we make it onto the island. And we were like, what the hell was that? What we didn't realize is that wasn't the final destination. That ship was going to head out to another island. It's not just a one way. It'll go to Mykonos, it'll go to Santorini, it'll go to Naxos, a million different islands out there. So if we stayed just a few minutes longer on that boat, we would have traveled out to one of those different islands. And that would have ruined it because our hotel that we booked is now on this island Paros that we have finally landed on. Now that comes to the next card, which is the Hilton Surpass credit card. Now the Hilton Surpass card actually has an offer I've never seen before where it's a $0 annual fee for the first year and then $150 thereafter. So kind of a no risk card for the first year. Link down in the pinned comment below if you want to try it out. But here's the value that I got from this card. So right now the offer is 130,000 points after $3,000 in spend in the first 6 months. I got an offer not that long ago of 130K plus a free night. I use that free night elsewhere. It'll be in a different video, but that 130K came in handy for this stay. Now I booked this hotel right here. Welcome to the Andronis Minois. And again, there will be a whole separate video on this hotel itself and everything that it includes. It's a Michelin key hotel and it's amazing. It's the best hotel of all time. But you can see right here, it's 100,000 points per night. And the room that we got was about $1,000 every single night. So about 1 cent per point with your Hilton points. So what I ended up doing was I just took 130,000 that we got from the welcome offer and about 30,000 that we had left over from my wife's account. And we booked 2 nights in this Andronis Minois right here. It's an SLH property. It's not a Hilton hotel. It's an SLH hotel. But now with their partnership with Hilton and SLH, you can book these specific hotels. And it's one of 2 that you can book on this entire island. I think this one's a little bit better than the other one, but that's just me. So we paid 160,000 points with their Hilton Surpass card and about an extra $200 in euros out of pocket to meet the remaining amounts that we needed for this stay, which I thought was well worth it because as you can see on your screen right now, it's the best view of a hotel you could ever possibly imagine. Absolutely amazing hotel. The views of the Aegean Mediterranean Sea are breathtaking. Literally, you can't get a better view. Maybe the room in front of us, but you literally from our balcony, you could not get a better view. It was my wife's birthday on the day that we checked in. They gave us a cake with a candle with some matches that she could light up and a bottle of wine complimentary. And the way I was even able to get to this hotel is, remember in the story, we just got off the ship. And so the hotel actually arranged a paid private transfer to go from the port all the way to the hotel. Awesomely, there was a guy that came up and he actually has a sign with your name on it, and he'll drive all the way to you, finds you at the port, and then drives you all the way to the hotel with your luggage. So that was an amazing stay. And if you're going to be booking this property, those people become your friends. It's usually, we had the same guy over and over and over, and he recognized us and we talked, and he would ask us about our nights each night that we were there. So can't say enough about this property. In about a couple of days, I'm going to release a whole video on this property itself because there's so much to know and there's so much to do. But I'll just give you a couple highlights. Went to a couple different islands via the complimentary shuttle that this hotel offers. So you save a lot of money on Ubers by staying at this place. Went to a nightlife place called Nausa, where you might have seen on Instagram, a place called Barbarossa. It was okay. It was kind of a tourist trap. But then we went to a place called Paros, which our driver mentioned that it meant instead of Paros. So Paros is the island I was on. Paros, in, I guess in Greek, they mentioned instead of Paros. So Paros is instead of Paros. Although might be controversial, but I think Paros is better than Paros. Sorry to say. Go to Paros. It's like a €1.50 ticket per person to go all the way over to Paros. And it's very calm, way less touristy, way nicer buildings, real authentic. And we found this one restaurant called Argo, which is like It was amazing. It was like the restaurant owner and his friend were just sitting there talking, laughing, greeting the new people. I developed a new phrase that I really like to use when going up to some of these restaurant owners and asking them what do they recommend in Greek. In Greek, it's timo proteneti. So I said, what do you recommend? And he said the special, and I said, screw it, let's do it, let's do it. So they got us souvlaki, which you could see right here, which is essentially just gyro but on a stick, with some French fries and some chickpeas. And again, the food. It just hits you. It just hits you. That was the best meal of the entire trip. That right there. Highly recommend Argo Restaurant. Hopefully this video doesn't go so big and it's like, now it's a tourist trap, but best restaurant of the entire trip. That was absolutely amazing. Highly recommend it. And then they wanted us to try some authentic foods. So they gave us baklava and they gave us some like cream baklava. I don't know the name of it, but that also gave us a huge kick and it was absolutely to die for as well. This place was amazing and it was really off the beaten path. We walked a little bit and we eventually got there. It was the best. It was the best of the entire trip. So we enjoyed our Andronis Minois for a little bit longer. We got to hang out at the poolside. We were able to leverage our Hilton Gold status to get complimentary continental breakfast, and there is no continental breakfast better than this one at the Andronis Minois. I mean, look right here, stacked breakfast buffet. And stacked ones that you could take. They have spanakopita, they have some baklava, they have some Greek yogurt, they have hard-boiled egg, everything you could possibly think of, bread, they have it at this breakfast buffet that you could just take as much as you want, and it's completely for free. Not only that, but they also have a menu that you can order off of, like full omelets, full foods that you could order completely. Great high-level food that we got, also completely complimentary via Hilton Gold status. So just by being Hilton Gold this stay saves you a ton on the breakfast. That's like high level food. It's not your standard buffet. Like this is food you can get at a restaurant. I think this is our best stay of all time. I think this tops the Waldorf in DC. So eventually our time comes and now we have to head back over to Athens, Greece to get into our next hotel, which we'll talk about in just a second. And to get there, we take a sea jet. Now, again, I'll have a whole video detailing that the boat experience is a lot to know. Just know the sea jets, when you buy them, you're going to get a ticket and it's going to give you an assigned seating. Just know that that means absolutely nothing. You get on the boat and you find a seat as fast as possible because someone is going to steal your seat. It's every man for themselves. So you run, you find a seat, you sit there, and you hope no one really fights with you. And even if you do, you just say like, I literally saw people say like, and then they walk away. So every man for himself. Just know if you are somebody that gets seasick, book the champion jets. Those are usually a lot bigger and they don't move around as much. So the bigger jets, those are the ones that take a little bit slower, but they're bigger and you won't get seasick. But very enjoyable, much better, I would say, experience than the Blue Star, but it's its own world. I'll say there's so much more I want to say, but it's the video is getting too long. So we make it back to Athens, and now we have to check into our last hotel of the entire stay, and that was actually using the next and the last two credit cards on our list today, that being the World of Hyatt credit card and my Capital One Venture card. You might be wondering, how does that work into the whole thing? So basically, I did this. I booked this hotel right here, the Grand Hyatt in Athens, and you can see it's about 15,000 points per night. I actually found one for 12,000 points per night, around $300+ every single night in USD, and it's a Category 3 Hyatt. If you look right here, you can see there's a pool rooftop and views of the Acropolis. Well, wham bam, here's my view of that exact thing that you just saw. That's right, I was on that rooftop. I saw the Acropolis from the rooftop pool, and yes, it is as breathtaking as it is on the photos online. So if you're somebody that just wants that view, I do think this hotel is absolutely recommended just for that alone. However, I booked it in a few different ways, and I actually don't think it's the best hotel you can book in Greece, for a couple of reasons. But first, how did I book it? Well, one, the first night, I just booked it with 12,000 Hyatt points. So that's easy peasy, easy money, got that done. Oh, and like maybe subscribe to if you want. Um, so I used 12,000 Hyatt points. I booked that stay. Cool. That's one night. The second night, however, I actually used my Venture Card's welcome offer. For those of you who don't know, the Venture Card, when I got this card, I applied for it. You actually get 75,000 Capital One miles and a $250 travel credit, to which I said, well, I don't necessarily have a use for it right now, and I would like to extend my stay in Athens. So I said, screw it. I used that $250 to discount a $300 a night room, and I only ended up paying about $50 out of pocket for the second night of the stay. And then lastly, we also had a free night certificate with my wife's World of Hyatt credit card that only can be used at a category 1 to 4 hotel. But remember, this is a category 3. So you are able to use a free night certificate at this specific hotel. And that's what I used on my third night. Also, I also mentioned that it was my wife's birth week at a lot of these different hotels, and this hotel, much like the other ones, were actually able to get us upgraded. So our first night, we were in a family suite. It was about 500 square feet, and we had a comically large, absurdly big balcony terrace that looked outside and all over Athens. It was overlooking the entire city of Athens. Actually, an incredible view, and I think definitely the upgrade was worth it just for that view alone. Like just that view alone will be amazing. Again, I sound like a broken record. I will have an entire video on this hotel itself because there's good and there's bad. Cliff Notes is it's not the greatest location. It's far away from the area that I like, which was the Monastriaki Square. Remember the food tour? However, they do have a free shuttle that takes you kind of close to there, so a complimentary shuttle, which a lot of these hotels actually have. And unfortunately, the elevator is the most annoying thing in the entire hotel. Like it took us like 30 minutes to get from our room to find out where the elevators were, and then once we got there, the elevators never found our floor. We could never get there. I'll put it like this: the Grand Hyatt in Athens is a category 3 that's masquerading as a category 8 because it has the insane views, it has the rooftop high level dining experience, it has a lower level dining experience overlooking the Acropolis, it has 2 pools, it has a Grand Hyatt lounge, which normally you'd have to have like club access for that. I just got it via just, I don't know, they just gave it to me. I guess the room type gave me access to the club lounge, which honestly was kind of lackluster. We just got some free water, nothing really too special about it. A very nice gym, very nice lobby, and again, a complimentary shuttle bus. So it's like it has all the makings of a really high-end hotel, but in a category 3. It's tough to say. It's high-level luxury, but it was also the most annoying hotel on earth. Like the check-in process was very long. It was always some sort of confusion. They helped us out immensely, and they actually did really amazing there. So no shade there. But it expected to take about 20-30 minutes to actually get checked in and go to your room. So there's that. Also, the elevators, again, they never take you to your floor. It's one of those where you have to scan first and then you can go up, and like it'll go to a different floor. It'll pick up 50 people on the way up. Like it was the most annoying elevator of all time. Our first room in the family room was like through a special set of doors that looked like just an exit. Then all of a sudden it opened up to a new area of the Hyatt. It was very odd, and it took us like 20 minutes to find our room on the first night as well. Maybe we were just dumb, but it was crazy. Say it together. Going up. Worst elevator experience ever. I know, listen, elevator is a thankless job, so I think the elevator for working 24/7, but you'll never get to your floor. It'll never come to you.
There's
You
never
can't
been a
even
more
force it.
complicated system.
So I would say for the views, and if you don't mind being a little bit away from the main area of Athens, then it's definitely well worth the 12,000, 15,000 points per night. And I probably would use a free night certificate there again if that's all I had. Otherwise, I would 100% book that first Hilton. That one where we landed, I would book that over and over and over because that's just the best location and a great property at that. And then, of course, one of those nights we ended up going to see the Acropolis. You could see the views of all of Athens, the Parthenon, the stadiums, everything you could possibly think of. Highly recommend this tour right here on your screen. It's a walking tour and a bus tour. You could see the changing of the Greek guards. Absolutely insane experience, and I couldn't have asked for better people during that. The last couple days, we pretty much went up and down the main strip that we really liked. I had a mission to actually order completely in Greek and without having any English whatsoever, to which I accomplished that, and I was able to order my spinach pie. If you want to know some of those words, you could say yasis for hello or goodbye. So you say yasis, borona, which is can I, echo, which is have, ene, which is one. Think una in Italian, but ena for Greek. Ene spanakopita. So borona echo ene spanakopita. Can I have one spinach pie? And you could say parakalo, which is please. And they'll sometimes say katialo, which is anything else. And you could say ochi, which is no in Greek, but most people just say no. They just say no. And then also I was able to order a Freddo espresso, but it was the best coffee, the one we got at that shop earlier. Amazing. My wife wanted it. And you could say borona echo and Freddo espresso. And 2 sugar is Dio. 2 is Dio. Zachary, which is sugar. So very amazing. And I'm actually really happy that we were able to get around with the limited Greek that we had. And we learned a lot of little phrases. Again, I'm going to be putting that in the newsletter as well. So if you want to sign up for that down below, I'm going to teach you all the things that I learned that helped me in Greek during this whole process and actually opens people up I believe it was Nelson Mandela that said, when you speak to a man in his second language, you speak to his brain. If you speak to a man in his first language, you speak to their heart. And that showed. Every time I would say yasis or afaristo, which is thank you in Greek, all these different things, you could see them light up. They opened up a little bit more and they're much more happy to communicate and hang out with you. They were all amazing and everybody speaks English anyway, but part of me just wants to assimilate. I love the language learning. It's my favorite thing. So I really love that. So if you like that too, you're in good company. And actually, one little tragedy kind of struck during this entire trip before we talk about the flight home, which was on the last night we ended up going to a separate island because we have nothing else planned. It's like a €10 trip to Aina, which is the island adjacent to Athens. It's a small, decent sized island, and it's pretty calm. There was not that many things, and we got some good food while we were there. However, the place that we got food from said that they only accepted cash. So I said, "Oh, where? ATM? Cash?" She pointed to the one next door. I put my Chase debit card in, which was locked, and I forgot that it was locked. I put my PIN code in, and a thing on the screen showed up that you never want to see while you're abroad. And this was the first time I ever needed a debit card in the entire stay. And it said, your card has been retained by the bank. It sucked my debit card in, which was really dumb because I didn't even need to insert it. There was literally a tap option where I could have tapped and put the PIN code in and would have said denied. No, I inserted it and it retained my card, stole it from me. In fact, my Chase debit card is still an Aina. I'm back home. It's still an Aina. Sure enough, I panicked for a second, but I was like, I'll just call Chase and I'll just have them send me a new one, cancel that one, whatever. We should be fine. But then we had to pay the bill. My wife was like, "Can we tap to pay? Is there anything we could do?" And then she said, "Oh, here's the credit card reader." So then we paid with our credit card. Oh, and I didn't even mention what card did I use throughout this entire journey in Athens, Greece, and in Paros. All of these different islands. Yeah, Amex wasn't really accepted as much, but I didn't even try. I have to hit a welcome offer on my AA Advantage business card. And so I use this for absolutely everything. I literally use this card for everything. All of the expenses were all put on this card. It's a MasterCard. Never had an issue being accepted. Most of the stores and restaurants we went to were all tap to pay. They're literally just all tap to pay. Everybody's got tap to pay out there. So no issues on the credit card front whatsoever. Debit card is still an Aina, but what can you do? So we made it through our journey, right? We ate some of the best food, met some of the best people, stayed in some of the best hotels I've ever been in. It was everything I wanted it to be and more. And I can never stress this enough on how amazing this trip actually was. I don't know how much I can actually convey it. In fact, I'm sad because in the last 12 hours, I've been trying to find out how to do this video because I have like 7 videos planned for this trip. And I know I'm never going to be able to do it justice because it was the best trip my wife and I have ever been on. And we want to go back. Like, we really want to go back to Greece. Like, we felt at home there. This entire process did not feel foreign to us. We fully assimilated, and Greece welcomed us with open arms. And I cannot stress that enough, how great the people were there and how amazing this trip was. So if you're thinking about Greece, go to Greece. Absolutely. But now we had to go home. And so how did I book the flight home? Well, I had also leftover miles in the Air France loyalty program from some miles that I transferred from Amex many, many years ago. I actually had about 36,500 left over, something like that. And I was like, I wonder if that's enough to get home. Sure enough, it actually was. Now, I can't find it right now, unfortunately. But you can see right here, this is basically the same flight. So this flight right here, Air France flying KLM Airlines from Athens to Atlanta, and there is one layover in Amsterdam. And so this was the actual flight right here. You can see it's 25,000. I paid 18,750, I believe. So it ended up being like 37,000 afterwards. So I forget the actual numbers, but I literally have I had like 1,000 or 500 Air France miles left over after I booked this flight. Decent taxes and fees. I know I could have done way better with like AA miles, but I was going to switch it, but they didn't drop yet. I didn't have my AA miles, and I really just wanted to get rid of my Air France miles, and I had the exact amount needed to get home. So that's what I did. And so I booked this flight, and there was one issue with this flight other than the high amount of taxes and fees, and that was we had to do one layover in Amsterdam before we can fly home to Atlanta, and that layover was only 50 minutes long. Now, I knew going into this was 50 minutes long, and I knew that there was a very high probability that we likely wouldn't have made it. Like, we likely would not have made our connection and hopefully they would have rebooked us the following day, and we would stay a night in Amsterdam, which didn't seem like the worst thing in the world. However, after doing 7 days in London and in Greece, we were like, we just want to go home. Honestly, we really just want to go back and sleep in our bed. And so I'm still like kind of beat up from the trip. You kind of hear it in my voice. I'm actually coughing a little bit. So we're sitting in the terminal, we're eating some more spanakopita, and we were boarding the flight. And I actually have a whole changed perspective on lounges where I kind of think they're kind of overrated. I'm gonna do a whole separate video on that as well. But long story short, we went to some Plaza Premium, went to some Priority Pass. They were okay, but they're not food that we really want anyway. And honestly, we sat in the terminal for a couple of those legs, and we were happy. So lounge access might be a little bit overrated personally, but I'll do another deep dive on that. But we got on that flight, and sure enough, we are boarding the plane, and then they say, hey, we have about a 30-40 minute delay. And I'm like, okay, that's our entire layover. Great. Now we're staying in Amsterdam. So then a little bit time goes on, and about 20 minutes goes by and say, oh, actually, we're leaving now. So I was like, okay, 20 minutes lost. So now we only have about 30 minutes to get through the Amsterdam airport, which I've never been to before. Never did it. And I have to somehow in 30 minutes get off the plane, passport control, and make it all the way to my next terminal, which is the other side of the Amsterdam airport, all within 30 minutes. I think we could do it. I didn't know if we could do it or not. So I go up to use the bathroom on the flight, and I asked the flight attendant, I was like, do you think this is possible to make this flight? And one, she did check, and she saw that the next flight was actually delayed by 15 minutes. So I got an extra 15 minutes, only like 45 minutes for this layover. But she seemed pretty calm about it. She was like, yeah, but there's always delays in Amsterdam. You should be fine. And so I asked her like the route and stuff like that. So she helped out a little bit. And just to get the times down, we would be landing at around 5:20, and our next flight was around 5:50. Think of it like that. 5:20 landing, 5:50 flight. But as we were going to land, we heard an announcement over the loudspeaker, which was, oh, it's about 5 minutes to 4 Amsterdam time. And I was like, wait a second. Amsterdam is an hour before Athens? So wait, we just gained an hour on our layover? Which ended up being true. We literally went from just like a 50-minute layover to an hour and 50-minute layover, even though with the delays, it ended up being just about an hour we had extra. But I digress. But the point is, my app never said that. On Air France, it only used the local time of Athens for everything. And I don't know. I think this is like a glitch, to be honest. It doesn't really make sense to me because it literally on the app says a 50-minute layover, but based on the time zone change, it never was a 50-minute layover in the first place. It was always an hour and 50 minutes. So I don't know what happened there, or if that's like a problem on Air France's side or the app and stuff like that. But literally it was an hour and 50 layover. Ended up getting delayed, and we had about an hour to make it through passport control and stuff like that. We literally just made it in time for boarding in our zone, which we had bulkhead seats in KLM all the way back to Atlanta. You can see my wife and I right here. We have our makeshift business class with our legs stretched out. Honestly, bulkhead's very nice. I actually really appreciated that, and that helped a ton. And it's a pretty high tech, little seat. They have like the little screen that pops up. You got the tray. Really, actually good food on this flight with KLM. They had like meatballs here and mashed potatoes and a really good dessert. Like, absolutely love the staff. They were very friendly. They were actually like being funny and making fun of me a little bit. Really nice food, and couldn't actually recommend them enough. Just know that there's always going to be delays. So if you're somebody that has that 50-minute layover, just know there is that time change depending where you're coming from. But then also just know that Amsterdam's always delayed, and they're not the most organized that I can see. Seems like it was like, I don't know, everybody was kind of up in the air all throughout the airport, but it's very easy to get through the airport. So it was good and bad, but I actually really loved it. Eventually, 8 hours later, really tired, exhausted, we make it to Atlanta.
And as far as like totals are concerned, I mean, honestly, I could add up every single Uber, every single cruise that we went on, all of the food, absolutely everything. And I know people appreciate the numbers, but if I could just give you a ballpark on what everything actually cost out of pocket after all of my credits and stuff like that, honestly, I thought about it just before filming this, and I really do think it was just about, I would say, if you're talking about the entire trip, like hotels and flights included, and all the different things that we paid for, the entire trip was probably about $7,500. I would say 6,000 of that would probably be all points a mile. So our hotel points with Hilton, our airline miles with Air France and Alaska, stuff like that. And I would say we probably spent about $1,500 total out of pocket. If you factor in, London killed us, I would say. London was the extra, like $170 for the hotel and some food there, the $200 in tours, and the Uber that was like $150. Like without London, if it was just Greece for the 7 days, probably only spent about $1,000 cash out of pocket, I would say, which I thought was not that bad. That's factoring in the tours, all the food, and all the Ubers, and the ships. Probably about 1,000 out of pocket personally, I would say. But I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I will say that there was something that happened during this trip that really opened my eyes. And I don't really want to bring it up, but unfortunately, the news that before that flight, there was some news that struck, and I saw it in the Discord that morning. That Air India flight that unfortunately went down, and everybody except one survived. Terrible, absolutely terrible, and I really, I can't even imagine for the families. And we saw the pictures, and it was terrible. And so I simultaneously felt horrible, but then also felt horrible as well. I was like, I get the statistics around flying, but I'm like, I'm with my wife on a birthday trip, and I'm like, everything's gone perfectly. I'm like, I'm assuming the worst. Luckily, we made it through, but I can tell you I prayed many, many times on that flight. About 20, probably about 20 times. Sorry if I'm being dramatic. But it was the one thing that I remembered on that entire flight home, and just the entire trip in general is just this entire trip was just spending time with the person that I loved in a niche that I absolutely love, which is credit card points and miles, being able to stay at the nicest places, meet the awesome people, really talk to all these people. Here is Nippon, our driver, who ended up becoming my friend during his entire journey. All of the food that we ate, the people that we met, the experiences that we had going to London and Athens and Amsterdam, getting our passport stamped in a few different countries, like an amazing experience on a last second short notice with using, like I said, credits on cards that most people consider throwaway. The only thing I could urge throughout this entire thing, which is the biggest platitude and cliche, but you know what it's going to be, is take the trip, enjoy it, have fun. You never know when it's going to be your last. Immerse yourself, enjoy it, use your points and miles. And even if it's a last second trip and if it's economy, deal with it. I will say I want to do more business class because economy was a little bit rough, but you get my point. If you want to get all the details on everything in this video, join the newsletter down below. You're going to get tired of me talking about Greece, but it's like the next 7 videos that are planned is all Greece. So if you want to just unsubscribe for a week, cool. I understand. But just know it's going to be all Greece for the next week because I have so much to actually say more than this video. And I just thank every single one of you for even watching any of this. So I appreciate every single one of you for being here. Have fun, enjoy, and take care. All right. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.